In this video, I'm going to compare two of my favorite signature punches from two of my favorite fighters, Floyd Patterson and Rocky Marciano. Now let's begin. The two punches we're going to compare is the Floyd Patterson Gazelle hook versus the Rocky Marciano Susie Q, that overhand right. So the first one we're gonna go over is the Gazelle hook by Floyd Patterson. Obviously you know about Floyd Patterson. He's a custom auto trained fighter. So you can see he's working that peekaboo style. He's in a crouch. He's slipping side to side, slipping down, bobbing and weaving, trying to get close to his opponent and then unload those super fast combinations that he had. But you notice a lot of his knockdowns and knockouts came from that Gazelle hook. So what is the Gazelle hook? Well, what does a gazelle do? A gazelle jumps high, jumps forward. You ever see gazelles or even deer jump over fences? Okay, same thing. It's a jumping lead left hook. Now the important part about the Gazelle hook is how you set it up. You just don't, first of all, you can't do it upright. You can't be in an upright. You got to be in that low crouching position. So what I'm doing is I'm using my head movement, getting my opponent to pay attention or get used to me always moving my head. If he's throwing shots at me and I'm going side to side, down, bobbing and weaving, he gets used to that movement. So I'm kind of luring him in or setting a trap. Okay, it's almost like attack by drawing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show two ways to do it. You can do it out of the knee bend. So I step forward and I squat down. Knee bend is straight down here. And then out of this position, I'm gonna drive off that rear foot. I'm not jumping up into the air, I'm lunging forward, driving off that rear foot. So when I'm here, I might go side to side, down. Now I loaded that Gazelle hook and I'm gonna drive off, jump in with the Gazelle hook, and then I can continue bobbing and weaving and moving my head when I'm done. So again, I'm here, maybe I'm working that side to side, getting my opponent throwing punches at me, and then I step in, drop down, drive off that lead, that rear foot, throw the hook, and then I can continue bobbing and weaving. The second variation of it is that instead of dropping straight down, is I got to step in, I call it a drop slip, where I step in and I slip to the side, but I crouch over. All right, maybe I'm moving my head, I step in and drop, and then my legs are now loaded up like a spring, and then I can come out of it, throw that hook, and then continue bobbing and weaving. So against the heavy bag, again, remember, I got to set it up. I'm not just gonna drop and throw it. I got to get my opponent throwing shots at me, get used to this movement, get used to the pressure. Okay, he gets comfortable for that. Maybe he starts punching down at me, dropping his hands down. So when I'm doing that, I side to side. I work my way in, and then I drop, and then throw that Gazelle hook, and then continue bobbing and weaving. So again, I work my way in, drop, fire the Gazelle hook, and then continue with my head move. Remember, I can drop it straight down, or I can step in, get my head off to the side, and then fire the Gazelle hook. So the second punch we're gonna look at is the Rocky Marciano. He named it. It was so good he gave it a name, the Susie Q. All that is Rocky Marciano's right hand. There's two variations that he threw. He threw it to where it was more of a straight, like how he knocked out Jersey Joe Walcott, or he would actually step in hard, drop down, and loop it more. So you gotta start by looking at Rocky Marciano's stance. Rocky Marciano was a croucher. He had horrible footwork, but he made it work. But he liked to crouch and he liked to lay on his right hand side. I don't recommend anybody laying on the right hand side, because you can see where he got hit with right hands a lot. He would parry or pull away, shoulder roll it, all right? But because he was laying on the right hand side, he was preloaded for that overhand right. So Rocky never just threw like a traditional straight right. His hand was usually out a little bit, and then he'd pull it back to here. All right, so he's here, he's crouching, he's stepping in, maybe moving his head a little bit. He would always step, just like a baseball pitcher would step before they threw. Remember, Rocky used to play baseball. He was a catcher. So he knew how to throw a baseball. So he threw a Susie Q just like throwing a baseball. He would get his head off to the side, cock it back, and this hand would be here, and then he would just rotate his whole body here. And you can see where it's just real short one. So if I'm here, remember traditional boxing, you're more up here. Rocky was down crouched on the side. And then he would jab his way in. He would step out at a 45, bring his hand about right shoulder, even with the shoulder, and then he'd drop it. He'd drop it right down the middle. You can see when Mike Tyson knocked out Franz Botha in 1999, that was a very similar right hand that he threw, like how Marciano knocked out Walcott. So again, I'm here, maybe he'd jab, he's here, he's crouching, he's working his way in, trying to time it, and he'd pull it back to here, step, and just throw that, poof, and then he could roll out of it. A lot of times he missed and then fell forward because he put everything into it. Okay, so against the heavy bag, remember, you go jab your way in, jab your way, crouch, and then poof, throw that short right hand to Susie Q. So again, working my way into jab, maybe parrying my opponent's jab. I step, poof, throw that short right hand. So that's the first variation. The second variation is where he looped it more. Almost just like a baseball player. All right. It's funny when you think about it that Marciano, he wanted to be a professional baseball player. He didn't make it. All right. I think he was going for the Cubs or something. And when he didn't make it in baseball, he went to boxing. Okay. So he throws that Susie Q just like throwing a fastball. Okay. So the first variation, he threw it more straight. All right. The second variation is he'd bring it back, but he'd do a little circle, like a little rainbow. He would loop it and then comes over. It comes up like he's throwing like this overhand, and then it would go in more linear. A lot of people like Chuck Liddell would turn the thumb down and they throw like a circular punch. Rocky's overhand would come up and around, but then go in more linear. Okay, so we're gonna loop it now against the bag. So he'd work the same thing. He'd work his way into his jab, his head movement, his plodding footwork, and then throw that overhand right, and then usually he'd bob and weave. Bob and weave when he's done. Marciano's style is very similar to Tyson's style, as in he would always punch and then move his head. And then punch again, move his head. Punch again. He just keep grinding you out for 15 rounds. So again, let me show both variations. More of the straight version. Okay, right down the middle. And then more of the looping version. Okay, this punch, I tell you, saved my butt a lot of times when I was fighting in the amateurs. Okay, I would be losing the fight on points, getting outboxed because I was more of a slugger, and then I'd time that overhand over their jab. Very beautiful punch. So, just a quick review. Floyd Patterson, Gazelle hook. Okay, now, just a quick reminder, Rocky Marciano had his version of a Gazelle hook, but a lot of times Rocky would weave in and then come up out of the weave. He'd usually get a little closer and throw that where Floyd would be a lot farther out. He'd throw it from really far out. That is it. I hope you liked this video. If you do, comment, hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can always leave comments down. I read everybody's comments. If you have suggestions for videos or ideas, remember when practicing these, you got to train it on the heavy bag. And then if you got a partner, you can do this on mitts or the punch shield. And then you got to get into sparring and trying to make it work in sparring. Because if you can make it practical and make it useful in sparring and make it land, then if you're a competitive fighter, you're going to be able to do it in a real fight. That is it. Have a good day.